What's up guys, my name is Jonathan Timbrook, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and here are some frequently asked questions. So I get a lot of questions, so I wrote some of them down and I put them in my phone, so I'm gonna run through these right now. Excuse the sweat and the emo hair, I just got done teaching judo class. Where did I train before this? So currently I'm training at Ohana West, I'm one of the coaches here, and before this I trained at Nemesis Jiu-Jitsu, which is now Unity, which is in Arkansas. It was in North Little Rock. And then before that, I actually had a funny story with this. I was a college athlete and I played soccer, and then I got injured. I broke my ankle, and then a year later when I came out for tryouts again, because I couldn't play because I broke my ankle, I tore my ACL meniscus. So what I needed was college credits. So I started sifting through all the classes like last minute to do to find what my college credits that I needed were, and I needed something that was the fitness related, the cardio relation, and I needed something fitness related. So I sifted through the classes, weightlifting was taken, running, all that shit was taken. So they had jiu-jitsu at the bottom, and I was like, oh man, I think that's that stuff where they like punch people or something, because I had no fucking clue what I was talking about. And I signed up for it with my brother, and I got into the class, and the class was taught by a blue belt, but he was a college wrestling coach, and he brought in a black belt, and I thought it was cool what the blue belt was showing, but I sparred with the black belt and he kicked my ass. My ego was up here because I was a college athlete. I was already a pretty big person, so I had a big ego. Thought I was all that, and he totally kicked my ass in like 2 seconds. I grabbed his collar, trying to cross collar him from the guard or some stupid shit probably, and he choked me so fast. And then I was like, damn, what'd you just do? And then he did it again, and then we kept sparring, and he probably submitted me like 20 times. His hair was all messed up, he smelled like marijuana, and he totally kicked my ass. And from that moment on, I knew that I was in love with jiu-jitsu, and that I was gonna give up playing college soccer because I was kind of a poor sport and not a good teammate, and I would blame other people all the time. And one of my favorite things about jiu-jitsu is that there's no one to blame but yourself. The reason you lost, this guy right here, that's why you fucking lost. So I really like the self-accountability of it. I like that it killed and kicked my pride and my ego. And I had a fear of, and I've always had a fear of like getting hit in the face or like, I guess, fighting and violence. Jiu-jitsu kind of fixed that. So it fixed, the whole pride and ego thing, and then it fixed that. It let me know that I wasn't top of the totem pole, and then also it pulled out away a lot of those insecurities like overall as a person. So technically I started back in college, and then after that I joined the military, and then I trained in Arkansas over there, and now I'm here in San Antonio, Texas at Ohana. How long have I been training? I think overall now it's been about 8 years. I took a little break going from training in college to the military, obviously. I went through basic and tech school, and then picked it up on base over in the military, and then I joined Nemesis, which is now Unity, and then now I'm here. But overall it's been about, like if I accumulate all the time, it's been about 8 years. How long did it take to get my black belt? So when I joined the military, because I knew I was already autistically obsessed with jiu-jitsu, I kind of set a mental goal for myself. I looked up online what the shortest time it was for people to get black belts in jiu-jitsu and like minimum times, and through IBJJF it was going to be somewhere around 6 years. So I set around a 6-year goal for myself, and before I got out of the military I got my black belt. So I got my black belt in around 6 years, which honestly was a really stupid goal. I should have set the goal to be better at jiu-jitsu and not care about the belt that much. But sometime at like blue belt, I did stop chasing the belt. I didn't really care that much. I really was just trying to chase as much knowledge as possible and info. Oh, I get this question all the time. What should I be working on? Usually whenever someone asks me this question, what should I be working on? I always have a different answer. And that's because every single time someone comes up to me and they say, what should I be working on? And usually they're so like low on the totem pole of jiu-jitsu that it's probably like the more simple escapes and attacks. So a lot of the times, and I've heard other black belts say this, and I do think it's 100% correct, and I'll explain. It's easier and easiest to learn, train, and get better at escapes and surviving first. Because right now, if you walk into a gym as a day one white belt and you say you want to spar and they let you, the odds are is that you'll end up in bottom side control, bottom mount, or with someone on your back eventually during the round. And if you took somebody that has no jiu-jitsu knowledge and you spent 25 hours on them drilling heel hooks, and then the second the match started, they get double-legged, guard passed, and now they're in bottom mount, and they don't know anything about escapes because the person they're fighting is good, then they're screwed. But guarantee you can walk into any gym, slap bump, and pull bottom side control. I'm not saying you should, but I've definitely started rounds before when I was drilling. When I go through my phases, I always go through phases of studying where I'm like, I get obsessed about one topic and then I move on to the next topic and then I move on to the next topic. At the beginning, you should start with all the escapes because guarantee no matter who you fight, whatever happens, eventually when you get to live sparring, you can always replicate and recreate that scenario of bottom side control. If you want to play, X guard, that's fine. But if you're not good at X guard and you go spar with your coach, unless your coach lets you start there or you ask him to start there, the odds are you're probably not going to get to X guard on your coach, especially if he's like a pressure passer. So you got to be realistic about what you should be studying and what you should be working on. Where you find yourself the most often, positions you're getting stuck in a lot. Usually those are the bad positions. So those should be the first things that you work on. So whenever someone asks, what should I be working on? Usually I go down that train of thought process, go down that road. So. Is jiu-jitsu gay? Of course it is. I have a black belt in it. Of course it's gay. How do you think I got this black belt, man? Fucking, no. Yeah, it's gay. I wouldn't have a black belt in it if it wasn't gay. It's gay. What injuries have I gotten? Oh boy. Well, I'll go from most recent. No, I'll go from the first thing that I got was I didn't tap to an Americana, the one from Keisakatami side control, where they put their calf over the wrist and then they like hip into it while they hold your head. I didn't tap to that, and my first coach, it wasn't his fault. I didn't tap. It cracked my elbow, and ever since then I've had like tendonitis in my elbow, kind of. And then somebody did a Toriando pass and they landed hard on my ribs, and I had a bruised rib for a while. I broke my ankle doing very bad drilling with my brother when I first started jiu-jitsu. I didn't tap to a straight ankle lock and it cracked my ankle. I didn't tap to a heel hook and it cracked my heel. Both of those were about like a month, but no like serious stuff. And then most recently, the day before my black belt debut training, I tore the ligament in my middle finger and it's still like puffed up and swollen. I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera. You probably can, but yeah, my middle finger here is like super swollen in comparison to my other one. And it's been like months now, so it's definitely been fucked up for a while. But yeah, I tore that ligament in my finger because I death squeezed a grip and then they ripped the grip away real hard. Not their fault, again, my fault. And then and then I didn't tap to a Kimura and I tore my labrum in my shoulder. And then really recently I let somebody throw me when I shouldn't have, and they spiked me on the tip of my shoulder and it partially separated my AC joint. So other than the couple of freak accidents, I probably could have prevented every single one of those. I didn't have to death grip the guy's sleeve for the finger one. I could have tapped to the Kimura earlier. I could have tapped to the ankle lock, could have tapped to the heel hook. Most of those are a pride and ego thing. And all of those were either in class or for like some plastic metal that didn't fucking matter. So there was no reason for any of that to happen. It was all an ego and pride thing and I should have just tapped. All my fault for the most part. What's the best martial art? I hear this a lot. The second I say I train jiu-jitsu, people ask that and then they get this really big shit-eating grin on their face because they know that I'm gonna say jiu-jitsu. And they're probably gonna say some other martial art or whatever. It depends on what you're talking about. My favorite is jiu-jitsu because I train it the most and I think it's the most fun, whether it's for sport or self-defense. With that being said, I don't think anything in terms of self-defense is better than training for MMA fights. Nothing will replicate that just as well. I'll caveat this with saying I think everyone should probably, that's allowed to carry a firearm. That's the best self-defense. Then I think it's MMA, so mixed martial arts, but it's getting ready for a fight type of MMA, meaning you do some kickboxing, you do some wrestling, you do some boxing, you do some Muay Thai, you do some jiu-jitsu, and basically those are all the main martial arts, and you can train judo, because it's like, if it doesn't work in MMA, it won't work in the street fights. Meaning, I think that all the martial arts I think there's good stuff kind of from everything. I think there's really good kicks in Taekwondo. I think there's, you know, some good kicks in certain types of karate and whatnot too. But for the most part, I don't think those would prep you for a fight. And technically, I don't even think jiu-jitsu perfectly prepares you for a fight. I do think that if you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, the odds are is you're gonna kick most people's ass that are untrained completely in a street fight. But I think a lot of people that train jiu-jitsu do get a false sense of security on what they can do when they don't practice striking and punching and kicking, or when they don't practice getting hit in the face. You know, they say bags don't punch back. I mean, same thing. We can do a lot of stuff in jiu-jitsu and people don't punch back. So I say you should train for an MMA fight, whether it's a striking base, whether it's a wrestling base or a jiu-jitsu base. If you prepared for a fight like that, that's the best style of self-defense. I do think things like Krav Maga and like the now style of karate where you have like these like black belts that are like 14-year-old kids, all bullshit. If you don't spar live with resistance with the intent of basically hurting your training partner, or the ability to at least, like striking or like jiu-jitsu, then it's not gonna be realistic for what happens. You can't kick someone in the eyes and then strike their throat and then kick them in the nuts and twist their dick and then just expect, because you practiced the motion of that in a real fight, if somebody came up behind you and locked in a rear naked choke, that you'd be able to stomp on my toes and do all that bullshit. I had this argument with somebody when I was in the Air Force, and I was like, no, like you can do whatever you want. Like I'll sign a contract. Like you can punch me, you can poke my eyes out, you can grab my balls and give them the old twist. Like it doesn't matter. If you let me start with a fully locked in rear naked choke, I will choke you unconscious before you could even do any damage to me, because you're untrained and your first reaction is gonna be to bring your hands up. You're gonna panic because you're not used to being choked. And I even had some people that were like, cool, like if you can survive for more than 2 seconds in a rear naked choke before you tap, then I'll give it to you, sure, whatever. And nobody could. I did it to a couple of people, no one was even fucking close. The second I started putting on the squeeze, everyone tapped. So don't train any of the bullshit martial arts if you're looking for self-defense stuff. You can only train basically MMA, right? So train for a fight, like I said, that's the best. And then any of the secondary best ones is any style of wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing and boxing are both basically in there. But basically anything else for self-defense doesn't work. And the best is to do something that kind of incorporates all of them, which would be MMA. My thoughts on the respect, bowing, all that stuff. So this is kind of a weird one for me because it still feels weird to me that people walk up to me and bow to me. Personally, I think the thought and the idea of it to me is better than the actual thing in practice. Like I know a lot of people are talking about like a cult mentality, like if you have to bow to your coach, then you're in a cult. If you have to, I know that people are shitting on Gracie Baja, like you have to ask to go to the bathroom, all that stuff. So I think there's probably a happy middle ground. I think you should have a borderline respect for everybody. And I think that a lot of the times the reason that you should respect people that have higher belts is because they can probably kick your ass. I don't like the blind respect stuff. And you'll see that with all the bullshit martial arts out there. But I think there's a good happy medium. I don't think you should have to ask to go to the bathroom. Just put your fucking shoes on and go to the bathroom. But I think it's a nice thought. I think it's the same thing when I was in the military. Once I got to the rank of sergeant, I didn't give a fuck if you called me sergeant or not. But like the thought of you having the respect was nice. And then like the second you did it like once or twice, I was like, we cool. But it like was like kind of annoying when like their first reaction was disrespect as a lower ranking airman to an NCO. And then I was like, all right, bro, come on. Like you're not gonna have that initial, you know, meeting of respect. And that's usually what I like to see. Someone gives like a little bit of respect, and then afterwards, and even more so, you can prove yourself on the mat that you deserve respect as a good black belt by kicking everyone's ass that's basically not a black belt. And then I think it's pretty good and it's pretty self-explanatory from there. Everyone kind of catches on with that. But yeah, I don't think it should feel cult-like. I don't think you should be, you know, doing things for your coach that aren't jiu-jitsu related and all that jazz and all that stuff. So yeah, it is what it is, but I think a happy medium is probably a good spot for the whole respect stuff. Ecological training. If you guys haven't heard of this before, the ecological approach, I'm sure someone's gonna say that this isn't what it is, but the concept of it, from my understanding at least, is right now, especially if you watch people do stuff like judo, you'll see people drill a technique over and over and over again to build the muscle memory for it, and then they'll drill ways to get to that technique, to defend it, all that stuff, and then you drill, then you drill with resistance, and then you spar. The ecological approach is there's all these people coming out with this style of you play games or goal-oriented training rather than, I always reference Twister. So what I mean by that is the game Twister, like right hand on red, left foot green, you know, left foot yellow, like, and it'll just like, listening to those things as a person, it's going in one ear and then it's kind of going out the other. So you'll hear it, maybe you'll do it that time, but you might not remember it and you don't really know why. And sometimes people think that when you teach jiu-jitsu, it feels like that, like an Americana, right? The arm is up at here at 90 degrees. When you're on top, you grab the wrist, you go into the elbow, you connect the key lock, you get your figure four, and then you do that. If you just say all of that stuff to a day one white belt, maybe they can do it with you watching them, but the odds are is that the next day that they come in, if they did it a single time, then they probably won't remember exactly how to do it. It's gonna take them, you know, 30, 40, 50 times of you reminding them trying it live before they can start catching on and getting it. So rather than treating teaching like the game Twister, where it's like, you should put your left hand on their wrist and your right hand goes underneath, and then you hit the right? And then it goes on that whole thing. Rather than that, you play games. So if it was the exact same thing in Americana, and this is just me like spitballing off the top of my head, you would play the game, okay, the first game is to pin your partner's hand to the mat. So while they're in bottom side control, when you're on top, find ways to get your partner's arm with the back of their hand or the front of their hand down, pinned on the mat. Does everybody understand the game? When you're on bottom, you're trying not to let your hand get pinned, and you could shrimp to guard if you need to, right? Or if you can. So basically, person on bottom can shrimp, person on top, try to push the hand to the mat. Everyone get it? On three. 1, 2, 3. So right there, I just explained the game, and I explained what both parties are supposed to be doing. They both have goals, and now they're trying to get to their goals. Hopefully they already know how to shrimp, because I just didn't go into shrimping right there. But I basically said, get back to guard if you're on bottom and resist. And if you're on top, try to pin their hand to the mat. And I think people coming up with developing their own ways of finding how to get people's hands to the mat without the coach saying, you know, either just push it to the mat or the coach showing a very specific version of it. Because I think when people hear a very specific thing, their mind like kind of tunnel visions that specific thing. So the theory is that if I make you play this game, now rather than spending, you know, 5, 10, 15 minutes drilling the Americana, where it becomes kind of mindless, there's no resistance. If I can get you to play a game to get you closer to the Americana, then the next time I show the next game, it can be to either advance the position or advance that submission. So you can kind of force people to like learn by doing with resistance rather than mindlessly drilling. So that's the whole ecological approach, is more game-oriented training rather than like, this is technical and how you do it, this is how I do it as a coach. I think there's a happy medium somewhere. I think that's where a lot of success comes from, to me, is some version of either one or the other. One being, you show a technique, you have them drill it, and then you have them do it with resistance, so they still get that, like, they know what the goal is. The goal is to get the hand to the mat for that Americana. Or you have them do it in reverse. You give them the game first, you make them try to pin the hand down, and then you give them the technique afterwards, and then you make them drill, and then again, we go back to sparring. I think there's a happy medium. I think there's a lot of weird stuff with the ecological people saying that you should do zero drilling at all. To me, that's stupid, because I don't think you can figure out the intricates of the mechanical ways that the body is broken or resisting. And I think that when you just do a bunch of ecological training, you're losing out on the wisdom of your coaches. And I think that accumulated knowledge is a lot easier to take in than you having to figure it out on your own. I think it's good to figure stuff out on your own. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot of what jiu-jitsu is about, is figuring stuff out. But I do think that somewhere in the day or in that class, you should learn what your coach does, because he probably has a more efficient and better way of doing it than you. So I think a happy medium of the two, maybe some games, maybe some technique from the coach, some drilling, and then some resistance drilling, and then some sparring at the very end so people get used to it. But that's the ecological approach. What are the 3 things you need for jiu-jitsu? Autism, steroids, and the third one is an either or. You can either be Brazilian or gay, so pick and choose. What should I study or who should I study? I kind of answered this a little bit earlier with what should I be working on, but again, I think it differs based on the person. If a brown belt asks me that question in comparison to a white belt, my answer is going to be totally different. Like I said with white belts, you should start new. With brown belts, it's probably going to be more of an offensive base, depending on what guard they play the most, and then I could talk to them about that. I think more interestingly is who. And this kind of goes into the final question is, or statement is, I'm a cheater black belt. And what I mean by that is, I don't think I had to go through the same things that my coach that gave me my black belt went through. And that is, I had access to YouTube and videos and instructionals online back when that wasn't as prevalent or common. So being able to just pull information whenever I want from world champions is basically cheating to me. And technically now I don't have to be taught just by my coach. It's like I can learn a side control escape from my coach, and now I can go home and learn a side control escape from Sean G. Hiberio. I can learn it from Gordon Ryan, from John Danaher. I can learn it from people at B Team, from Craig Jones. I can learn a side control escape from, Henry Adkins. I can learn it from Carl Provick. I can learn, I have all these people that I know off the top of my head where the second I'm curious about a technique or how another person does a technique, maybe even if I'm good at the technique, the second I'm curious about, I have all these people in my head. And I just listed a couple of them there, but there's a lot of really good channels out there. All the new wave guys with Danaher and all of them, all the B Team guys, those are great if you're real big into nogi. I know a lot of the times for stand-up, I study a combination of judo guys and wrestlers, and even sometimes a little bit of MMA, but mainly judo and wrestling, trying to pick up things that I can apply for jiu-jitsu. And then, yeah, I'll literally just go through world champions, Tynan Dalpra, Mika Galvao, Adam Wardzinski. I'll go through them, I'll look up the videos that they have, and then I'll go look up their competition footage, and I'll just kind of do this back and forth where if I know a YouTuber already off the top of my head or a world champion, maybe I'll look up their version of an instructional that's free on YouTube, and then of a technique, and then I'll look up fight footage from them and see if I can find a clip of them in that position, and maybe they do the same thing, or maybe they do something different. And I know that's very common. Coaches and people teaching technique do shit different against good people than they do again with whatever they taught. But yeah, for the most part, world champions and all the main popular YouTubers, but there's a lot of them. If you guys need suggestions, I'll put suggestions in the comments. I know a lot of people off the top of my head that I could list off. And then, like I said, I'm a cheater black belt because I feel like the older generation had to go more through the suck and the wonder than I did, because the second I would lose as a brand new white belt, I would get crushed in bottom side control like we all do. And I would go home and I could just look up side control escapes, that's true, but more specifically, I could look up the exact same escape 30 different times and it taught 30 different ways. So whatever escape, elbow escape, underhook wrestling up, I have my own favorite variations of those, but I found them by looking up that exact escape that my coach taught in class already, and my coach has his variation that works well for him, and I could do it. And then after looking up 1,000 videos of the exact same thing, I could go test any of those little details that I saw, or if all of them had, if 100 of the videos, and in 99 of them, they all had the exact same, maybe one step of the process, then for sure, that has to be a step that I'm picking up. And then everyone's body is different. I'm tall, so getting frames in is a little different, and using leverage is a little different. So maybe if you can find somebody that's also your body type, that'll help out. But that's why I'll kind of joke around and say that I'm sort of like a cheater black belt. I'll joke around and say that I'm kind of a cheater black belt because I feel like I didn't have to sit through as much of the wonder and as much of the let me figure this out kind of on my own, because we have the infinite knowledge of the internet and there's so much information on YouTube, it's ridiculous. There's an infinite number of stuff and people are posting more every single day. So definitely use that to your advantage if you can. But yeah, I jokingly will call myself a cheater black belt because I didn't have to struggle like that because I had the internet at my access for studying. So anyway, if you guys like this style of video, this questions and answers, these were just common questions that I've been asked in the past. So I thought I'd write them down and give you guys a little bit of the detail and backstory. So until next time, let's get it.